y'all. So I wanted to come to you today with a message that hopefully will expand your mind, which is always my intention, right? But specifically with regard to emotions and how they can serve us when we view them and their purpose a certain way, through a certain lens. And so I want to make a observation that I've had and that's simply all it is. I never claim to be an expert. I'm simply a student in this life, and hopefully sharing my thoughts will get you to think and process on your own and find your own truth so that you can carry that forward and manifest your best life as well. So my thoughts on emotions are basically that I think that we are kind of predispositioned, we are pre-programmed to view life from a lens of separation and not wholeness. I don't think that we just naturally, intuitively see the connection between things. I think it takes effort. And so, and I do think conditioning plays a big part in that, and society, especially modern society. And I personally think that there's a reason for that, but that's a whole nother topic. But just, having the inspiration of wanting to apply this lens of wholeness on the topic of emotion and their purpose. It surprisingly, as I was, researching and reading and thinking and marinating, as I like to say, on all of this, it really brought a clear picture together for me in my mind. And so I'm hoping that this will benefit you all too. I have a lot of what if questions for you today. Okay. So, what if, I would start with this one. What if our stubbornness wants to make everything more complicated than it really is? So there's one what if. Another is, what if love is at the center of it all? And I want to reference this book again. I've mentioned it a couple of times, and I've mentioned the specific part of it a couple of times because I don't remember a lot of it, but this certain section in the book really stuck with me. And it's, again, by Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the book was very surprising to me. I actually picked it up in my early 20s in this old used bookstore. And it was a situation where they had some really unique books. And the title was kind of, honestly, it was kind of boring to me. But for some reason, I just felt called to pick it up and flip through. And I was really surprised even flipping through. And I did read that book cover to cover and really enjoyed it. And it's one of those books where the title, it's like, don't judge a book by its cover. Yeah, that's very fitting here. So to reference again the part in the book where he talks about the circle of concern, and it's essentially becoming conscious of what is within the circle, which is also within our control. In other words, if something is outside the circle and outside of our control, then we shouldn't have any concern about it because there's nothing we can do about it. We should only be concerned with what is within our control, and that's why he calls it the circle of concern, right? But I love how he was walking us through in this certain section in the book, like how to do your own self-assessment and journaling with regard to that line of thinking. And he was essentially saying, like, here's all the different things that people can put in the center of their circle, right? And it's kind of like, he did such a great job. This wasn't a religious book. It wasn't a spiritual book, but there was this undertone throughout the whole book that kind of led you to believe that he was a deeply spiritual person. And so I loved that. I thought it was just a really intelligent way to bring that numinosity into everyday life in an intelligent way to expand the reader's mind. You see what I'm saying? I didn't get the impression that it was some kind of how do I put that, like, cloaked way to try and convince people to follow a certain religion or belief system. I really didn't get that. I felt like the spirit was well intended behind the book, and I felt like it really was meant to expand your mind. But as part of doing that, it's kind of like he just, that was his background and his lens, so it just came through his writing in that way, and you couldn't help but see the numinosity that would emanate through his message. Does that make sense? And so where am I going with this? Look back at my notes. Yeah, so there was, like I said, this insinuation of this numinosity. And so in this exercise, he was guiding you through to draw out and chart out your own circle of concern, like where you are currently in your life is like an assessment, and where you would like to be. He was giving all these examples of different things in life that people would value to the extent that they would, plop it, like one main thing or two or three main things right in the center of their circle of concern, when it was really not what they should have there. You see what I'm saying? So it was like a way to point out when someone's out of balance and creating unnecessary stress and unrealistic expectations in their life, like living with this resistance because they don't have things in the appropriate place. And so my impression, I'll go ahead and tell you this, and I hope it doesn't spoil anything for you if you want to read the book, but my impression of where he was going about what we should have in the center of our circle of concern is God, or our relationship to God. So, and I thought, definitely, because again, I'm reminded of this other book, and I can't even think of the name of it right now. It was Viktor Frankl was the author. It's a super famous book. I'll put the title in the description. It's one of those things where you just want to think of something on the spot, and of course it's just, any other moment, any other day, you can think of it immediately, but right when you need to, it's like it just it's not there. But it was, I think it was Man's Search for Meaning, yes, by Viktor Frankl. And so he was sharing his experience in, it's a hard book to read, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you right now, and I did read that one cover to cover, but he was sharing his experience in a concentration camp. It's an old book, and his point ultimately that I got from it was that your outside conditions under certain circumstances can be so extreme that you can literally have almost nothing within your control. Everything can be stripped from you, except your mind. Except your mind. Now, that's of course bringing up another thought it's kind of like, I've always taken that to be true, but then if you have experienced psychological abuse, even that can be stripped from you. That's like the last thing you can hold on to is your sanity, and your the well-being of your mind. Even that, unfortunately, can be stripped from you. But anyway, both of those are great books. I highly recommend both of them, and they'll stick with you for many years. And it just kind of gives you this. Both books give you a totally different perspective on things from just our modern society and the comforts of what we have today, and just kind of shakes you awake a little bit. But essentially, going back to my question, what if love is at the center of it all? And I just want to propose, this is like a journaling activity for you if you have interest, to draw or write out love in your journal and then circle it, and then have like a little chart where you have these extensions coming off from the center, okay, if you put love at the center. And then I want you to write out some emotions, just different emotions you can think of. And I'm going to give you some examples, okay? So I wrote anxiety, excitement, sadness, and anger or frustration. And then I want you to apply the lens of, how are these how are these emotions a form of love or related to love in some way? And just make a little note out beside them, you know? So here's what I did. I'm going to share with you what I did. And I don't really want this to influence you if you're really going to do this activity. So you may want to fast forward through this part and then come back and look at it later after you've already let everything come out from your own mind and heart without my influence. You know what I mean? So that's just my my advice. So here's what I put with regard to anxiety. Okay, so if love is hypothetically at the center of it all, and then you take a look at anxiety and you're like, how does it relate? I wrote anxiety would be related to the balance of love. So like, for example, will or do they love me? So think about the kind of things in life that create anxiety, and then just think about how that ties into love. You know, like, is love hanging in the balance in some way with regards to this anxiety? You know, and it doesn't have to mean like romantic love. It can just mean, I mean, obviously love is manifested in so many different ways. So it could just mean love of yourself, like feeling this peace and contentment because you love yourself to a certain degree, or because you're secure in God's love for you, and you have truly taken that to heart, and that has made you secure in that. So there's different ways to view love, obviously, but just think about what that means for you. How is anxiety basically like a sickness or an imbalance of love? And then I put anger/frustration, and I put rejection of love, either yours or someone else's, right? So like, we may feel very frustrated if we are just involved in a non-reciprocal relationship where we're giving of ourselves, right? You know, this charity, because love is defined as charity in the Bible as well. Say we're giving and giving of ourselves, but it's not being returned. So there's an imbalance there, and it also can feel like this person is rejecting the love within them by not reciprocating it to us, right? And then also, if we try to give love to someone else and then it's not appreciated, then that can be a rejection of our love or charity, right? Or our offering. So then I wrote sadness, and I put loss or fear of loss of love, or anticipating the loss of love, or a lost opportunity. So I still think this definitely ties back into love in that regard. And then you can think about grief, and how grief is really like, if you lose someone that you love, someone passes away, and you care for them deeply, it's like you have this love inside of them that's so intense, but it has nowhere to go anymore because they've passed on. So grief could be one you might want to expand on. And then I put excitement. So here we have a positive emotion, okay? And I would say excitement could be the experience of sharing love, or the anticipated expression of love, you know? Or the idea of how you could express love. So again, I think it all ties back into love in some way with regards to the expression, the balance, the loss when it has nowhere to go, a fear, a rejection, some kind of, action type word. You know what I mean? So there's an activity for you. And then just to expand on this, again, I do believe that we are pre-programmed to view kind of everything through a lens of this or that, just kind of like black and white thinking. I just don't think we realize it. But as we go through this discussion, I just want you to be viewing everything through the lens of wholeness, because it's going to make a lot more sense if you do that. So I like to challenge myself. And what I mean is, when I'm inspired to look into a topic, a lot of times it's one where I don't immediately see the direction that I need to take it with my research, with sharing it with you all. And it's almost like instead of just dropping that and finding something else that's just, unfolding very easily in front of me, sometimes I just want to latch on to whatever this is that just feels like it's not fully baked, and I just it just motivates me even more so. And I know that's the ego, right? And it's just, I guess being stubborn. But it's kind of like I feel like, I just want to I want to allow, if I'm inspired, then I feel like it's for a reason. And I want to allow it the time it needs to come to fruition. And I understand that we can be stubborn. And I think sometimes even, when it comes to a breakthrough in our conscious awareness or even our comprehension, and I think it can be on a layer that we're not even fully conscious of. So anyway, I've pushed through, and I have one point that I'm going to get to that was really rewarding for me. And this is why I say this. I want to encourage you, if if something just comes to you and it's on your heart and you're like, I just don't really, you give it a few minutes in your mind and you're like, I'm not really sure where this is going, or I don't really know if it's worth my time. If it's on your heart, I think it's there for a reason. And I just want to encourage you to spend a little bit more time with it, just a little bit more. You know what I mean? There's been stories in the Bible. There was one that I saw a YouTube video on recently that was really inspiring and encouraging, but it was where these people were about to give up, and literally they were just minutes away from a huge blessing. And there's probably a lot of stories like that in the Bible. If I can find the one I'm thinking of, I'll drop it in the description. But I think that's kind of what how it works, And so ultimately I personally received a rewarding message by pursuing this topic that we're going through today, and I hope that it's going to bless you as well. So I feel like love, if it is at the center of everything, then it wants to bloom, it wants to blossom, it wants to expand as a continued and continual part of creation, okay? Because we know, if we put the spiritual spin on this, we know that God spoke everything into creation. And we also know that God wasn't motivated by love, because the Bible says He is love, okay? It's not as simple, simplistic and as basic as He was motivated by love. It literally says God is love, and that's in 1 John chapter 4 verse 8. So love, or God, is the motivating or determining factor in creation. It's the common denominator in everything, right? So love, this is kind of where my mind went with this. I feel like love is the creating force. So then if you take a look again at these emotions and you think about, there's so much out there, especially today, like on YouTube, for example, or in, books, self-help books out there about manifesting your own reality, creating your own reality. And I do have a video that I've done already on, I think the title is Faith versus Fear. And I explore that, and that's very much related to what we're talking about today. But if love is the creating force, then it would make sense that all the other emotions, how they may be love that's corrupted, or love that's unwell, or damaged in some way, how they are also still a part of that creating force. But if we're just down and we're stuck in one of those bad emotions, how it can manifest even more of that in our reality. But it's doing so unconsciously, because we are unconscious of that power operating through us, right? So that would just be an argument for how we can manifest our own reality, whether consciously or unconsciously. So what if love is an ongoing creation, and it just depends on how we dial into it? You know what I mean? And so that's where we're applying that whole lens, all the emotions and, the scope of how they operate through us and the impact on our reality in that manner. So what if there are unseen or unknown forces at work through us? And I'm thinking about even vibrations, in sounds and in, the emotion that's behind that sound or that word, or those words. And so next I'm going to think about God, and specifically God's existence, okay? So now consider this verse. This is Revelations chapter 1, verse 8. It says, I am the Alpha and Omega, says the Lord God, who is and who was and who is to come, the Almighty. So this is talking about the past, who was, the future, who is to come, and the present, who is, right? And then Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 23 says, I am a God who is everywhere and not in one place only. So God is present, I feel like, through and in all of creation. And this is just my lens. Feel free to apply your own. So moving forward with this train of thought, I was thinking, if this is true, you think about it. Think about this. How often do we go through trials, like really hard stuff in life? And that brings us to, our feelings, to our emotions, like face to face with hard emotions. And so, if we allow ourselves to feel these emotions fully, and thinking about like crying and embracing the tears and all the feels, then essentially a lot of times people come out of the situation feeling like they have moved closer to God, like they have been brought closer to God through this process. And I feel like that was my big aha here, that how this huge, not just love, but this huge range of emotions can serve a purpose in that manner. And therefore the trials and the hard things we go through, you might say, may serve a purpose in that manner to bring us, up close with these emotions, to ultimately be transformed almost like an alchemical process, into love, or the realization, even unconsciously, it's still bringing us close to love in some manner, which is God, because God is love. So I thought that connection between love and God and emotions and all the things we go through in life, and how that brings up all these emotions within us, I thought that was kind of cool, kind of a cool connection to just sit down and consciously think through the detail of all that, and then to expand this even further, to think about those people who are so cut off from emotion. It seems like they have no emotion at all, right? It's like they have no capacity or ability to even feel emotion. So, yes. So if we take a look at this, because a lot of my videos talk about narcissism and other toxic behaviors and people who were just heavily enmeshed in toxicity as a part of who they are and their way of life, and it doesn't seem like they'll ever change. So if you think about these people who just seem robotic and totally emotionless, like they're just so rigid that they're not willing to go there in their heart, then it's like, I feel like this explains why we often, especially if you're a spiritual person, why it's so easy to experience interactions with these people and feel like not just that there's a void of, the light of God, because I would say there's that too. It seems like there's that too, but not just that, but it almost can seem like there's a dark aspect to these people too, like maybe there's some kind of influence, dark entities, if you believe in that as part of your spiritual beliefs. So it just kind of all makes sense to me. It all kind of ties in together. Again, looking at it through this lens of wholeness and how can you connect everything all together. And you might even expand. You know, if you start out, you know, if you do journal as part of your practice, if you start out with love at the center and you branch off with emotions, and then you might branch off with experiences, and you might branch off from there, and it's really connecting dots and putting it all together. And so yes, it's just that both and mindset, right? And you know, the Bible mentions several times that we should make effort to become Christ-like, right? Which is to deny yourself and exude the light of Christ, which is love. And I feel like making this choice daily, trying to be mindful and do this daily, and just do our best. I feel like creation will flow through us, right? Through our engagement with this reality in a positive manner. It'll just be, if we try to keep ourselves healthy in that manner, then that love inside of us will flow out, and we'll be able to co-create this reality for us and others in a positive way. And because we're always going to be students in this life, forever and ever, right? In this physical reality. And all we can do is just do our best to become conscious, to continue to learn, and to cleanse ourselves from any kind of attachments that we have made consciously or unconsciously to negativity in this reality, because we understand now how that not only affects us, but how it affects, you know, what is to come in our life as well, or how it may block what could come that would be beautiful in our life. So yeah, I would just say to adjust and to strive to be better and do better every day. I mean, that's all we can do. And so I just hope that sharing my thoughts with you today on this journaling exercise and activity, even if it's just here, even if you only do it here, I hope that it has been enlightening and inspiring and encouraging for you. And I just thank you so much for coming along with me today. And I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you again very soon.